and she is joined by Arapahoe County Public Works and Development Transportation Manager Jim Katzer. Excuse me. We are here tonight to talk to you a little bit about our Transportation Master Plan. If you have spent any time in the county recently or over a long period of time, you know that we are facing quite a bit of growth lately, and we are projected to have quite a bit more over the coming decade. So with that in mind, for about the last year and a half, our PWD folks, along with other departments in the county, have been working on this Transportation Master Plan to sort of outline our vision for how we can upgrade, improve, enhance, maintain all of our transportation options in the coming 10 or 20 years, 20 years really. This has involved not just the planning and internal planning itself, but also outreach to groups like yourselves, to residents, to other stakeholders. And we want to talk a little bit tonight about finalizing this and get your questions and comments. So let me tell you before I introduce Commissioner Jackson how this is going to work. If you are joining us on the phone and you want to ask a question of either Commissioner Jackson or Jim Katzer, you can dial *3, and that'll put you through to an operator who will put you in the queue to ask a question. Or if you're joining us online, you can type questions into the comments box, either on Facebook or on our website. The other thing is if you're joining us by the phone or by phone, you can also follow along the PowerPoint we're going to show you by going to arapahogov.com/town hall or to our Facebook page, and you'll be able to see the video. And if you aren't doing that tonight, you can also see a recording of this within about 24 hours after the event. So with that, let me introduce Commissioner Nancy Jackson. Commissioner, I think you're muted, Commissioner. There you go.
That's the way it is these days, right?
Yep.
We're lucky I didn't get through the whole thing before I realized that. So, at any rate, I was thanking you, Luke, for being here tonight. Thanks to Jim, who will be our main presenter. But I also wanted to give a shout out to all of our residents who voted for our 1A extension of our open space and sales tax. We're really excited about that, and hopefully to maintain and grow the already amazing open spaces projects that we have already begun and in the future will begin. So we're all excited. Not coming from me. I don't know where that is. Okay. So Arapahoe County, as you know, and as Luke just said, is one of the fastest growing counties in the state of Colorado. And the pandemic didn't slow us down a bit. We kept on going and we kept on growing. So those of us who've been here for a while know that this is a great place to live, a great place to raise our families, and a great place to run a business. So one byproduct of this growth is increased traffic. More and more people want to move to Colorado, and more people are moving to Arapahoe County specifically. So this growth is placing increasing demands on our transportation infrastructure in terms of the volume of everyday traffic and the maintenance to make sure that everything is going smoothly as possible. So in the past few years, the Arapahoe County Public Works and Development Department has worked closely with the Board of County Commissioners and other departments to create a master transportation plan that envisions how our transportation needs and challenges will unfold between now and 2040. It's hard to think that far ahead, but it comes sooner than you just blink your eye, and here we are. The project has involved extensive research, study sessions, consulting with our community partners and other stakeholders, and public feedback from folks like you that are on this call. Some of you on the call tonight have probably completed, or we hope you have completed, one of our surveys or attended a community meeting and really kind of weighed in on our transportation-focused surveys, and that hopefully you've attended an event in your area. The Public Works Department has gathered all this information into the master plan that you'll hear about more tonight when Jim Katzer talks about that. So, speaking of Jim, I want to thank you again for being here tonight. We know that you have lots of things to do, but we believe that this master plan for transportation is something that you'll be very interested in to hear. So, with that, thank you all again. Have a wonderful evening. And Jim, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Jackson. Appreciate the introduction and look forward to talking to you tonight about the Transportation Master Plan. Just like Commissioner Sharp said, this is a very relevant topic and needs to be discussed and studied and planned for, if you would. 2040 is a long ways away, but it's just around the corner. We know that time flies. So with that, we're just going to hop into the presentation and just start talking about it. So if you can go to the next slide, please, that'd be great. The Transportation Master Plan is a little unique this time. This 2040 Transportation Master Plan is an update from the 2035 Transportation Master Plan. So these plans are updated every 5 to 10 years. So we're right on schedule looking at 2040. So the previous plan focused more on unincorporated parts of the county. But we know that as we travel and as we live here, those surrounding areas to the unincorporated areas are really important. So this master plan focused on a county-wide plan. So you'll see how that played out. We did a lot of work with the surrounding jurisdictions, and that was mostly found in the Arapahoe County Transportation Forum. And that forum was created through the DRCOG Metro District, which stands for Denver Regional Council of Governments. So on the Arapahoe County Transportation Forum sits all of the municipalities within Arapahoe County, all but one, I think. Whenever we were working through the Transportation Master Plan, we reached out to this group to give us feedback and to coordinate responses and so on. The Board of County Commissioners launched this effort. They funded it, and we marching through and getting ready to finalize it, coordinating with our partners. We also coordinated with CDOT and public stakeholders, as Commissioner Jackson said. So Commissioner Jackson alluded to the fact that our population grows, and as our population grows, so does the need for the transportation system. So if you can see on the right part of our screen is the projected population in Arapahoe County. So you can see we pass Denver in population about 2030, and it looks like we're going to be projected to be over 1 million in 2050. So that's a huge growth over the next 20 to 30 years. So we need to prepare for that. So the study basically looks at the existing conditions of Arapahoe County, and not just the road system. The road system is really important, but also what are the land uses here in the county? So the land uses are going to tell us how the county develops. So a lot of our growth is on the eastern urban area of the county, but there's different growth happening in the 4 square mile area. It's different, and it's more infill type of work or development, and that causes different types of traffic demands. So we also use those existing conditions to forecast the future demand. With the future demand, we combine that with a compilation of the community values and the values of those that are around us as stakeholders. What is a community value? Do they want an emphasis on bikes and pedestrians, or do they want an emphasis more on vehicles? Or maybe it's a balance. So we really want to focus on the community values in this plan. So with those, we also develop a strategy and goals to accomplish the Transportation Master Plan and obtaining the community values with this future demand coming on us. And we also perform a financial analysis along with other analysis, but I just mentioned that. We'll mention that as we go on. So the project started in April of 2020, and it wraps up this month in 2021 with a presentation to the board, and I know they're going to adopt it. But we started in 2020, and as you can imagine, this was right after we went to lockdown, and the world changed there for many months. So we'll talk a little bit about how that impacted this project, but not by much. Next slide, please. On this slide, I'm going to talk about the master plan goals. So we have 4 goals, and each of these goals are supported by policies and strategies that will help us achieve each of these goals. So the number one goal here, and these aren't in any particular order. So the first goal on there is promote an efficient and balanced transportation system. So we know that if we focus on vehicles and vehicles only, we get really big roads, and those still aren't enough. So we need to look at finding a balanced solution here for transportation. The second one here is promote alternative transportation solutions. The third one is coordinate land use and transportation. So it'd be great if we could live and work in the same community and not require um, people to travel really far for their work. Now we all know that we make decisions as people, and some people might want to live in a certain community and might want to work in another one. So we understand that that's a possibility too here. And the last one here is continue a strategic management and tracking approach to the county's transportation system. I wanted to dive in into one of these. An example policy is to provide east, west, and northwest connections in the eastern part of our county. So, in order to achieve that, one of the strategies in achieving that is that whenever there's a development, we need to make sure we set aside right away for these future north, south, east, west connections, so that in the future, when we go to build those roads because they're needed, that we don't have to go buy right away. We don't have to go wreck homes. No, we have the right of way, and it's been donated to us. So that's an example of one of the policies and strategies that would help us um, to accomplish some goals. Before I go on to the next slide, the picture here on the right is I-25 and Arapaho. And this project, I show this because this was identified in the previous Transportation Master Plan, and it was put into service, and it's really benefiting the Denver Tech Center in this area of town. It really serves the population. So with that, I'm going to go to the next slide, and I think I'm turning it over to Luke at this point. Or do I have one more, Luke?
Yeah, let's do the next one, and then I'll do the poll.
Okay, thank you. A little early this time. I wanted to talk about the public engagement process, and once again, this was right on the heels of everybody going home for months on time to work from home for the pandemic. So that presented a few challenges for us. So we had to think outside the box, and we already had some of these tools in place, but we had to fortify them and try to use them very effectively. So some of the tools that we use was the one that you see here, picture on the right, and it's just an online public map that you can drop a pin, and then you can make comments on your concerns or your whatever you want to comment on. And of course, it's related to traffic. We thought this public engagement process was very successful and had some great input. So if you participated, we appreciate it. We had close to 800 comments. And some of the priorities that we heard from you was that traffic congestion and traffic safety were really important, the most important to you. And that probably doesn't surprise you. And we're going to have a poll here. I'm not trying to lead you to an answer, so please vote honestly on what you think is important. But Luke's going to ask us a similar question here in a minute. Others that were noted in our surveys was road maintenance was important. Also, multimodal improvements were important too in our transportation system. So with that, Luke, I think you're ready to go.
I am. Thank you very much. As Jim mentioned, we've done quite a bit of public outreach and engagement to get your feedback on it, and we're doing this for each of the 5 districts during this round of conversation events. And so I want to ask you, what for the people on the call, and if you'll only be able to respond if you're on the phone for this one, but if you are, what is your top priority for Arapahoe County transportation operations, either your priority or a concern. And so press 1 if it's addressing traffic congestion. Press 2 if it's safety. Press 3 if it's adding or enhancing, press 3 if it's maintaining favorable road conditions. Press 4 if it's adding or enhancing public transportation options. And press 5 if it's adding or enhancing things like bike lanes, pedestrian lanes, carpool lanes, things like that. Let me repeat that again. So your top concern or priority. Press 1 if it's addressing traffic congestion. Press 2 if it's safety. Press 3 if it's maintaining favorable road conditions. Press 4 if it's adding or enhancing public transportation options. And press 5 if it's adding or enhancing things like bike lanes, pedestrian lanes, carpool lanes, and that sort of stuff. Just a reminder for those of you on the phone, you can dial *3 and be put through to an operator if you have a question you want to ask of either of our guests or our hosts, I guess. And then you can also type a question into the comments box if you're watching online. So with that, I'll hand it back to Jim.
All right. Thank you, Luke. Look forward to hearing your answers. So as we get into kind of the meat of the plan, the plan identified 44 intersections or road segments that had hotspots. So basically pinch points in the transportation system. And I know that each one of you have experienced those and maybe experienced those daily. So 10 of those hotspots they're located in unincorporated Arapaho County and 34 in the surrounding jurisdictions. So the plan doesn't dive into the specific improvements on each of these hotspots, like add a lane here, or to put a left turn lane in here. What we do more so is just, hey, here's a toolbox approach to these hotspots. So part of the toolbox would be physical improvements, so adding a turn lane, put in medians. Another one would be putting in signals, adjusting signal timing or just coordinating. It could be as simple as doing pavement and surface markings. And then signing, it could also be maybe a lower impactful or lower cost solution. Sometimes we'll get a great impact out of just doing signing. Next slide, please. So on the next slide, just wanted to talk about a few example projects that we had that the plan identified. So I'm gonna focus on the central part of Arapaho County. And when I say central, I mean just to the east of I-25, but west of E470. So an example project would be the widening of Smoky Hill from E470 to Buckley. So that's pictured here, almost in the central part of that picture. And that project, it was built as a 6-lane wide right of way. So, but we only built 4 lanes. So the widening can happen mostly towards the middle. So that's really helpful. But that project is going to cost about $14 million, and we recommend that to be done by 2030. The jurisdictions that are involved with that project are Arapahoe County, Aurora, and Centennial. Another example project I wanted to mention is more multimodal, and that's the Inverness Drive West on-street bike facility, and that's located in Inverness. The cost of that is almost $6 million. We're recommending it to be done by 2030. And the jurisdictions involved with that project are Arapahoe County, and then there's some metro districts around Inverness, and we're corresponding with them, and they're actually helping fund the project. Another project I wanted to mention that's just starting, and you guys have probably driven through it, is the Isla project. It's an operational improvement project from Quebec Street to Parker Road. We didn't do that section to the east of Parker Road, and that's in Aurora's jurisdiction, and they'll do it at some point. That project was identified in a previous plan, and we're currently working on that now, and we're hoping to have that completed in 2023. And that project, just for your information, we awarded on that project, and it was $25.6 million. So a very nice sized project with federal funding in it. Next slide, please. The next area I wanted to focus on was in the eastern part of Arapahoe County. So that's east of E470. As I mentioned earlier, this area is growing very rapidly. And not just in unincorporated Arapahoe County, but in Aurora, and that's where most of the growth is happening. But one of the projects is to widen Gun Club Quincy to Aurora Parkway. So that's just by Southlands Mall. And that project is estimated to cost 17 million, and that is recommended to be done by 2030. The jurisdictions involved with that project are Arapahoe County and Aurora. And good news on this project, we have preliminary design underway. We'd like to wrap up a final design here in a year and a half to 2 years, and then construction hopefully would start by 2025. But very important improvement. Another example project I wanted to mention was a little different than I mentioned before. It's actually an extension of 6th Avenue from Powhatan to Hardest. We heard a tremendous amount of support for this road going in. We have Sky Ranch that's being built at the Air Park and I-70 interchange, and a lot of people would like this connection, so they don't have to traverse to the north. They can just go to the west to go farther into Aurora. So we estimate this project to cost $11 million, and we recommend it to being completed in 2030. The jurisdictions involved with this project would be Aurora and Arapahoe County. Also, a huge component to this project is development. The city and the county have a policy where we like development to pay their own way. So whenever they develop, we require them to improve, or in this case, put in a brand new road. And of course, it has to be the right size for what they're putting in. But we lean a lot on developers in helping us complete our infrastructure. Next slide, please. So other recommendations that are found in the plan would include that multimodal aspect. So the plan is recommending the county and other jurisdictions to engage in the Reimagine RTD and Accountability Committee and look at their recommendations. I know the ridership for RTD is down, and the numbers have rebounded, but it was down below 50%. I think it's rebounded to 50%, and RTD is now providing about 70% of their services that they provided pre-COVID. So they're expanding their services slowly, but ridership is still a little down. So the plan encourages transit to expand, especially as development occurs. So as development occurs to the east, and even in these other pockets, we recommend that bus routes be extended. Also, a very big need is I-70 corridor going from E-470 to the east. A lot of people use this and commute into town, and there's a lot of development that is slated to happen and occur along I-70. So we think it's great to expand RTD or a CDOT service in Bustang. I got good news this week that's under serious consideration. Also, the plan recommends coordinating with the BRT or enhanced bus corridors, and that's depicted in this map on the right here. The maroon corridors are eligible and we think should be looked at for bus rapid transit. Also, coordinate with cities to establish mobility hubs. I met with a gentleman yesterday and talking about a mobility hub in Lone Tree. Very exciting. And that's where mode shifts happen, where you might come in on a car and then you would get on a bus or you get on a light rail or something like that. So mode shifts happen in these mobility hubs. Also, other improvements that were recommended in the plan, and this piggybacks onto the bike and ped master plan. There's 40 bicycle and pedestrian projects that are being recommended. And to Commissioner Sharp, the open space and sales tax should be able to help with these projects. So very excited about that. Also, supporting emerging technologies. Next slide, please. So the financial outlook, we know that these improvements do not just appear, and they're going to cost some money. So we're communicating this to the commissioners, and there's a lot of different options in front of us, but it's still going to take some hard work and some money to make this plan happen. So the preliminary estimate of the county share only for these projects through 24 is $250 million, and that would be for the road widening projects, the new connections, paving and the bike ped projects. These do not include bigger projects like interchange projects. For example, I-25 Bellevue, it's in desperate need of improvement, and that project has been estimated to cost $110 million just for the improvements there at that intersection. And you can see that that is a significant amount of this 250 million if we were to include those projects here. So 250 million for road widenings, new connections, paving, and bike ped projects. So a significant amount of money. Another goal was to manage the plan strategically, and performance measures can help us do that. So what we heard from the public, we wanted to try to measure. So we're looking at measuring congestion, so percent of congested vehicles hours traveled. So when you travel in a vehicle, or when you do, what's a percent of that time that is congested? So is it 20%? Is it 50%? So doing a measure like this can help us gauge how well we're doing with congestion, levels of congestion. Also, from a traffic safety standpoint, the number and severity of crashes is a measurement that we think we could would be helpful in measuring this concern. Pavement condition, we already report this. We report excellent, good, fair condition of our pavement. So we think this would be something that we should continue into the future. From the multi-mobility standpoint, amount of bike lanes or bike miles in service and being used is a good measure. And then also a mobility measurement. And that's more survey-based, but we think that would be something good to measure. Next slide, please. So with that, that wraps up my part of the presentation, and I'd be happy to take questions. And I know Commissioner Jackson's here to take questions too. So Luke, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thanks, Jim. To remind everyone, if you're joining us on the phone, you can dial *3, and that'll put you through an operator to get any questions you have answered. Or you can type a question into the comments box if you're joining us online. Let me give you the results of the first polling question, which it's interesting to see these from district to district because they do vary a bit. When we asked what's your top priority or concern for District 4 people on the call, 20% said that it's congestion, addressing congestion. 40% said it's addressing safety. 25% said it's addressing road maintenance and the like. 5% said that it is adding or enhancing public transportation options, and 10% said it's adding things like carpool, bike, or pedestrian lanes. So you can kind of see, obviously, like, for example, in District 3, which is the rural part of the county, there isn't as much call for bike and pedestrian lanes, but in your part of the county, there certainly is. So let's see. I'm going to ask, actually, let's do one more polling question, and then we'll get to the live questions. This one is more of a general question about Arapahoe County. And again, if you're on the phone, please press 1 if you are very likely to recommend living in Arapahoe County to someone else. Press 2 if you're somewhat likely. Press 3 if you're neutral. Press 4 if you're somewhat unlikely, and press 5 if you're very unlikely. So once again, how likely are you to recommend living in Arapahoe County to someone else? 1 is very likely, 2 is somewhat likely, 3 is neutral, 4 is somewhat unlikely, and 5 is very unlikely. So with that, we are going to get to the callers who've been waiting patiently. Our first caller has a question about Parker Road, which seems to come up in just about every one of these events, interestingly. This is Sandy. Sandy, go ahead. You are live.
Hi. When I'm driving on Parker Road going towards 225, getting on with that Hampton interchange, it is an absolute madhouse in the morning. I'm shocked I haven't seen more accidents. People aren't respectful. And what I find happening quite often is because of trying to go 225 north, people are driving up alongside and then cutting off people, and that's causing accidents. It's just, there's a lot of accidents on that interchange. I know it's controlled by the Highway Patrol, but at some point in time, Arapahoe County and Highway Patrol have to come together to fix this problem before there's like a death.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
Sandy,
think
can you give me the
Go ahead,
location again? Is that I-225 in Hamden, you said?
Sorry, I ended the call. I think what she's referring to is when you're getting on, you're on Parker, getting on I-225 either north or south. You have to very quickly make the Hamden move,
Yeah.
or head south on 25. And
Yes.
I know exactly what she's talking about. It's definitely a treacherous intersection if there's a lot of either high speed or heavy traffic there.
Yeah, Sandy, great question. And you're not the first one that we've heard. It sounds like Luke has experienced that. I know I have experienced that. And there's a lot of weaving there. Very difficult scenario. So I have good news for you, but the thing is, it takes a while to solve some of these problems. So the county has been funded by Dr. Cog, so that's the Denver Regional Council of Governments, and we're doing a study. And I know it's a study, and it's not actually physical improvements, but it's a study to look exactly what you're talking about. So we're going to do a corridor study of Parker Road. So not just addressing this area that you expressed concerns about, but all the way up to Mississippi. So that study will look at the different pinch points along the road, also address any bike ped challenges or any accessibility issues. But Paul Scherner with CDOT has really expressed interest in dealing with this weaving and this congestion that you're talking about. So hopefully we can get some early action items out of that project to get some improvements done quickly. I don't know exactly what it'll take. You can see there's a lot of different roads that access right there with Hamden coming on, and then people getting off, and then there's a little side road going to a hotel and getting access to a local area. So a lot of challenges, and I wish we could get to it sooner, but we're headed that way.
Excellent.
If I could
And
continue on that,
yeah, Commissioner,
I'd
go
like
ahead.
to I'd just like to ask Jim, because you mentioned the hotel, and I know this is not this is sort of my area. I live near here. I have to navigate this a lot. Getting out of the hotel parking lot and onto Parker, hopefully that will also be a piece of this. We've also got the Cherry Creek Dam roads that are kind of coming in there. So it's I would agree with the caller. This is an area that really needs a closer look to make sure that it's safe for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Excellent. Let's go to another phone question. You mentioned bike lanes in that last response, and this question is about bike lanes, and this is Mark. Go ahead, Mark, you are live.
Yes, I question the availability of taking bike lanes in front of single-family residential homes and eliminating parking in front of the homes, which is a common practice that Denver has done in some of the neighborhoods adjacent to the 4 square mile area, because of the fact that even though all those neighbors did not want homes blocking or having the bike lane block the availability of having guests park in front of single-family homes, it is creating a real hassle. It's done on Exposition, it's done on Jewel, and the neighbors are just up in arms, and yet the city of Denver has been totally silent in their respects of dealing with that. So I'm hoping that Arapahoe County takes a different attitude with bike lanes in single-family residential area and not allowing the cars not to be able to be parked in front of a single-family home. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mark. I appreciate that input, and I'll make a note of that. And as I mentioned, Open Space is a big partner in helping us get on-street bike lanes. Obviously, we're a little different than Denver because we're not as old, and we do have some of the neighborhoods that are older, like Denver's neighborhoods, but we haven't had to, and I don't know of a strategy to eliminate parking in front of people's homes to extend a bike lane through. So I really appreciate that feedback, and it sounds like it's really important to get the the neighborhood's buy-in before you move forward with a project like that. So really thank you and appreciate that feedback.
So, Jim, would something like that suggest the residential part of it? Would that suggest that it's something he should also ask his city about if he lives in an incorporated part of the county?
Yeah. So he's living in the city and county of Denver. So I mean, it sounds like they haven't been very responsive.
Yeah.
And so Commissioner Jackson.
Yeah, Mark doesn't live, because I know Mark. Mark doesn't live in Denver. He lives in unincorporated Arapahoe County, but he's referring to streets in Denver. And I think what he's saying is he doesn't want to see that same thing in unincorporated Arapahoe County. So if that makes anything clearer, I hope.
Mm-hmm.
It also probably has something to do if you live near an open space area where there is a lot of biking or something, right? I mean, that might contribute to something like that.
Yeah, that could as people want to come through. But a lot of these lanes, I think, are used to do a regional connection all the way through and provide some connectivity. One of the things that's nice with Arapahoe County, it's a little newer, so we have more of a tertiary system of roads where we'll have local roads and then collectors and then major collectors and arterials. I know that's not the case in some of the older parts of the county. So that what that leans to is that, hey, put these bike streets or these bike lanes on collectors. So usually there's not people parking. It's usually not in front of people's homes. It's not usually the case, but that's what we like to do. Put them on collectors or streets that are major collectors, and typically we'll do it on arterials occasionally, but the comfort starts deterring bikes from using the streets with high speed on them.
Interesting. Okay. I'm going to give you the results of the second poll question and ask you the last one. Just as a reminder, if you have a question for Jim or Commissioner Jackson, you can dial *3 and you'll be put through to an operator, or you can type a question into the comments box if you're watching us online. The last poll question was, how likely are you to recommend living in Arapahoe County to someone else? 31% of you said very likely, 44% said somewhat likely, 19% said you're neutral, 6% said somewhat unlikely, and nobody said very unlikely. For those of you in the neutral or, excuse me, the negative categories, we'd love to hear more about why you'd be a little more lukewarm about recommending living in the county to someone else. If you do have thoughts on that, we'd love to hear from you. You can email communicationsservices@arapahogov.com. And we're always looking for feedback from our residents, business owners, and so forth. And then let me tee up the final polling question of the evening. Again, if you're on the phone, please press the following button, depending on your response. The question is, how have your interactions been, or I'm sorry, how satisfied have you been with your interactions with the Arapahoe County government? So if you've been very satisfied, press 1. If you've been somewhat satisfied, press 2. Press 3 if you're neutral or it's not applicable. Press 4 if you're somewhat dissatisfied, and press 5 if you've been very dissatisfied. So once again, how satisfied have you been with your interactions with the Arapahoe County government specifically? 1 is very satisfied, 2 is somewhat satisfied, 3 is neutral or it's not applicable, 4 is somewhat dissatisfied, and 5 is very dissatisfied. So we will give you the results of those in a few minutes. We're going to go back to the phones. We have Sandy, who's back with us, thankfully. I think she has something to add to the Parker question. So, Sandy, go ahead. You are live.
Hi. So at the Parker and Quincy intersection, there's a gas station by the Cherry Creek State Park. When people are turning out of that gas station and they're making a left-hand turn onto Parker Road, and then the cars are turning right onto Parker Road from Quincy, you've got 3 lanes supporting 3 cars, but nobody can stay within their lane. So this is another accident waiting to happen where somebody's going to be seriously injured. I've been sideswiped where I almost got hit, but I stopped by cars that are much bigger than me and just pushed their way in. What's being done for this intersection? Why isn't there a green light just for those coming out of Cherry Creek State Park?
So good question. And Sandy, I think you're referring to the intersection to the north, because there on Quincy, I don't think there's an access to the state park. Is that correct? Are you referring to the access onto Parker Road from the state park?
Yes.
Okay. I can speak a little bit about Quincy and Parker, and then we could talk a little further to the north. But the Quincy Parker intersection, that's a very highly traveled intersection, and there's a lot of congestion, a lot of movement from southbound Parker Road to eastbound Quincy, and there's 3 turn lanes there, left turn lanes, so it's a very heavily traveled road and intersection. So CDOT and Aurora, and we're helping with the preliminary design, but that project is under preliminary design there at Quincy and Parker Road. I'm not sure when it's slated for construction, but we're well on our way to doing some improvements there at Parker and Quincy. In regards to Parker Road itself, this road is maintained and operated by CDOT. So I will reach out to CDOT and convey your concerns about that that signal and that access. I think that's at Lehigh, that's coming right out of the state park. I'll convey your concerns, and also talk to them about the Parker Quincy intersection, and to see if there's any improvements that can be done quickly. I know we have accident data, so we can look at that too, and see if there's any accidents that have a pattern that can be addressed. But I'll reach out to CDOT and make that connection. So once again, appreciate that, Sandy.
All right. Just as a reminder, if you're joining us on the phone, you can dial *3 and you'll be put through to an operator if you have a question for Jim or Commissioner Jackson. Also, you can plug a question into the comments box if you're watching online. We do have another phone question. This is Jean in Aurora, who wants to ask about what we're doing about special needs patrons. Jean, go ahead. You're live.
Hi, I was wondering if you guys addressed any special needs transportation for people. The RTD excessive ride needs a lot of improvement. And I just wondering if you're addressing anything in this area to help special needs people get around.
So good question. And the county does not have a transit service, so working through RTD is probably the best way to do that. And Commissioner Jackson, you're familiar with another group, but I think they focus more. I think that's community resources, and I know that they do some work with transportation services, but I think that's focused on a different group. Is that correct?
Well, they do help seniors, and they do help. There's a mobility group as well that we have a connection to. So if we can get this gentleman's contact information, we can have somebody from the county reach out to him and see if what we have fits his needs. It all depends on where he lives, and it depends on the particular kind of service that he's looking for. But, sir, we're well aware of that issue, and we'll, if we can get your contact information, we'll see what we can do for you.
All right, we'll get someone working on that. Again, feel free to ask a question if you're online via the comments box, or if you're on the phone by dialing *3. We have time for a few more. Let me give you the polling question, the third polling question results. This one was, how satisfied are you or have you been with your interactions with the Arapahoe County government? 27% have been very satisfied, 13% have been somewhat satisfied, 53% are neutral or not applicable, 7% have been somewhat unsatisfied, and nobody said they've been very unsatisfied, which we like to hear. We would still love to hear if you, those of you who are neutral or somewhat unsatisfied, we'd love to hear how we can do better and you can let us know that by emailing communicationsservices@arapahoegov.com. Okay, let's see. Let's go to some more questions here. You mentioned, Jim, earlier in your presentation, land uses. Can you talk a little bit more about how land use figures into your operations and planning? And if you have like an example that you could cite about how land use sort of determines what you guys do?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the 4 square mile area, there's a lot of different land uses, and I think that's a good example of how you can live and work within a community. So there's some work there that can be found, and also there's some residential properties and some other types of properties. Um, some of the challenges that we're facing now is kind of the interaction of those, where you might run into um, some businesses wanting to use the streets, and they're impacting some residents, but that's another conversation. One of the things out in the eastern part of the county where we will have a land use for residential development, and then there's a land use up by the Front Range Airport that is going to develop. Maybe it's commercial, maybe it's retail, or a land use that could generate some work. So those land uses would kind of work together whenever the residential property develops, or maybe there's jobs up near the Front Range Airport that drives development of residential. Well, those people that are going to work there, they could move close by. So then whenever you're talking about, okay, well, they need to get to work, or they need to get to shopping, or to pick up their kids, well, now they're going to need to use the transportation system. Okay, well, now since they're in close proximity to each other, the transportation system doesn't have to be really long to serve those trips. And then, if there are schools close by, people don't have to drive too far to pick up their kids and make those trips. Of course, we're all going to have some regional trips that we need to perform, whether we're going to see family in another city. But those AM and PM peaks really generate the size of roads we have. And those are typically behaviors of people going to and from work. So if we can keep those trips shorter, and even down in some cases where you're not on the road driving and you're creating a trip on a transit system, or maybe you're creating a trip on a bike and ped trail, that really helps out. And that's kind of that balanced transportation system we're talking about, where people are living closer to where they work. It really helps out with the demand. So, Luke, I think I hope I answered your question with that.
Yeah, it brings up another one that I actually want to ask Commissioner Jackson. So when we talked to Gene a few minutes ago, he asked about RTD, which is its own entity. What is the county's role in working with RTD to get things, to make sure other bus lines are running, or train lines, whatever, are running as smoothly as they can for people? If we're trying to get more people out of their car and onto public transportation, what can the county do to help that?
Well, I think a lot of this is Jim's land use answer, but we do work with RTD, and we do work with other transportation modalities to do the best we can to encourage people to work, live, and play in a fairly, I don't know, regional kind of area. Now since COVID, so many of us are working from home. That is cutting down some travel, and when I think things calm down a little bit, more people will then begin riding light rail and buses and so on. Because right now, I think some people are still not comfortable with riding with a lot of other people. But we're very cognizant of this, and we're encouraging our public works department to look for solutions in this regard. So transit-oriented development, that kind of thing, can all be helpful. And Jim, I'm sure you have something to add to that.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Jackson. Yeah, and the RTD district, they're going through that reimagine process. So they definitely have some groups where they ask, hey, what have you been hearing from your residents? What needs do you have? Are we meeting your needs? So we've been able to provide some feedback in the Reimagine, and then kind of an ongoing group where we're asking. I know Aurora really worked hard, and I think the commissioners helped in lobbying for that R line to keep that in service, because we wanted to make sure that those people along I-225 were being served, and not just pulling it away from them. So our RTD does listen, and like a lot of things, they have a business model they're trying to follow, and they also have a lot of other demands. So um, we're involved with them in those ways.
Yeah, and I would encourage anyone who has specific questions about RTD lines. I would probably should start with them as far as adding bus lines or frequencies or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
We do have time for a couple more questions. Please dial *3 if you're on the phone and you want to ask a question, or plug a question into your comments box. Jim, you mentioned in your presentation the value of partnerships, and of course, in a big and unusually shaped county like Arapahoe is, there's a lot of shared jurisdictions on our roads. Can you talk a little bit about how we work with partnerships and why they're so valuable to the county?
Yeah, great question, Luke. And one of the things that's unique about Arapahoe County is we have pockets throughout. And whenever you travel our roads, you don't know necessarily that you're going from Denver to Arapahoe County to Greenwood Village. You're just wanting to drive, and that's a good request and a good expectation of people in the transportation system, that they have similar experiences as they drive along certain corridors. So in the plan, we identified 24 key corridors, and I didn't go into those, but those key corridors really help tie our communities together. For instance, Arapahoe Road is a corridor. ILIF was a key corridor. Of course, you got I-25, 225, but these corridors have been identified, and we met on each of these key corridors, and this is where the partnership comes in. We met with each jurisdiction, or as a group collectively, to talk about these corridors. So we sat down with the city of Aurora, Centennial, Greenwood Village, CDOT, and talked and laid out a corridor and said, hey, what's our vision along this corridor? What are the improvements that we see coming? Where are the problem areas? And we worked to document them. And then from that, further is needed to put projects together. So yeah, we identified this project. We see it as a need. Now let's come together and fund it. So that takes a huge amount of coordination. And I listed a few of those projects, and we had some phone calls here about CDOT roads. Well, we're going to have to reach out to CDOT and work to convince them and come alongside them, and encourage them to make improvements along a road or study a road. So this is where partnership really is very important. I think the county's been very successful at developing these partnerships and maintaining them. With the jurisdictions that are within the county, their common denominator is the county. So City of Centennial, Aurora, they share a boundary, but the county is common. So we've seen ourselves as kind of that person that brings people together, or that party that brings people together. And maybe we're not funding the majority of the project, but we're trying to lead that effort to get these projects to happen. Dr. Cog and the Arapahoe County Transportation Forum really helps with that process too. So we'll come together and we'll put projects forward together as a team, and we'll talk about how we're going to fund it, to make some commitments on that level. But those partnerships are very important. In regards to those counties or those cities outside of Arapahoe County, not that it's more challenging, we just don't rub shoulders with them as much, but we still have a good relationship with Douglas County, with the town of Parker, with Adams County, and the city and county of Denver. Sometimes we'll have different priorities, different ways of looking at things, but I think that comes to the point where Arapahoe County and the jurisdictions really work to shine, to get over those differences and to partner and make a successful project.
So speaking of priorities, how does our PWD department prioritize its projects? I mean, I assume it's some combination of funding, traffic, how urgent the need is, that kind of thing. How do you guys decide what to do first?
Yeah, that's a great question, Luke. And before I get into that question, we went and had a conversation with the board earlier this year, and we asked them, "Hey, we have three types of projects for funding, anyways. One is just a strictly Arapahoe County project, so there's no other partners that we could pull out and say, "Hey, help us fund this." So that would be just a separate unincorporated Arapahoe County project. And then we have split projects where we'll have a project that is bounded by or split by another jurisdiction, like the city of Aurora. And this would be true for the gun club widening, and even the ILIF project. We had the city and county of Denver, and then also Aurora in that project. And then we had that bucket, and then another bucket would be the regionally significant projects. So we talked with the board about how do we approach these, and they agreed that, hey, we need to fund all of these. We can't fund them necessarily as much as we would like or as much as needed, but we can work at funding these. So bring us those projects. So that was good to hear, and this is what we've done in the past. So that was good to hear, and so that's good news. And then in order to prioritize them, we have the Transportation Master Plan, and that helps prioritize them based off of development and growth. And then there's also this available funding opportunity. So if we have a partner that really wants to move a project forward, we're going to listen, and we're going to see if it meets our priorities and move it forward. The board has established a process that we take capital improvement projects through a process, and they now have a new strategic plan. So we evaluate our projects based on that strategic plan, and that's been helpful. And we put projects, and we compete with other capital improvement projects within the county, and there's recommendations that are made to the board on those, and we usually lay out a 5-year plan. And we rate these projects, and the board ultimately will decide on their priorities, but it's ran through this process, and there's a lot of buy-in along the way. The Public Works Department, we justify our projects. We tell the benefit, we tell how it fits into the strategic plan, and then it competes against these other projects, and then the board ultimately picks those projects, and we move them forward through the process.
Commissioner, could you say a few words about how the strategic plan guides all this?
I can tell you that I don't have it in front of me, but I will tell you that it does set our priorities, and when it doesn't work with our budget or with our strategic plan, we're not going to necessarily take the leadership on all the projects. If the project is mostly in Aurora or Denver and so on, we don't necessarily. We've been a leader in almost all the projects we've been involved in, just because we have such a great staff. But we've decided, for various reasons, that we'll pull back a little bit on that. We'll still participate. We will be partners, and we're good partners, and we have the track record to show that. But we won't necessarily put the most money in or be the leader on some projects. But we're in the game, if you will. We're participating, and we still have our amazing, excellent staff. Jim is one example of our knowledgeable and really enthusiastic and caring staff. So we work together and try to figure out what's best to relieve the most serious issues, given all the other priorities that we have to balance in the process.
Definitely. And we should mention too that the pandemic shut down a lot of things, but it did not shut down PWD in any sense of the word. They've been working hard since, unchanged really, through the pandemic to get all these projects completed. So We really appreciate that. And that brings us to the bottom of the hour. So I want to thank everybody who joined us tonight. Like I mentioned, you can see a recording of this on our website within about 24 hours, and or our YouTube page as well. And we will be doing more events like this in the future, and we hope you will join us then. So thanks very much to Commissioner Jackson and Jim Katzer, and thanks to all of you.
Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful and good night.